The universe is a vast and complicated place, but nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared the galactic concordance for humanity. We weren't their first contact, but we were definitely their most unexpected. Most species evolve along predictable lines. They develop technology, explore their solar systems, and eventually join the larger galactic community with a polite nod and carefully curated diplomatic protocols. Humanity? We crashed that party like a rugby team at a China museum. The initial reports from the first contact teams were confusing. Humans weren't just another spacefaring civilization. They were walking, talking violation of every known biological and physical limitation. Their home planet was essentially a pressure cooker of evolutionary nightmare fuel. Gravity that would crush most species? Check. Atmospheric conditions that resembled a chemical weapons experiment? Absolutely. Predatory ecosystems that made other sentient beings' threat assessment algorithms short-circuit? You bet. But what truly terrified the Galactic Concordance was humanity's seemingly limitless capacity for adaptation and absolute disregard for what other species considered safe or rational. Take Jack Riker, for instance. A man who embodied humanity's collective hold-my-nutrient supplement approach to existence. Jack wasn't just a chef. He was a culinary engineer stationed on the Neutral Zone's research platform Epsilon, a sprawling space station designed to be the most diplomatically neutral location in known space. Which, naturally, made it the perfect powder keg for an interstellar incident. Standing at roughly 6 feet 2 inches, with the kind of muscular build that suggested he could bench press a small atmospheric shuttle, Jack looked like he'd wandered out of some ancient military recruitment poster. His dark hair was perpetually messy, his brown eyes held a permanent look of sardonic amusement, and he wore the standard-issue research platform jumpsuit like it was a custom-tailored suit. "Another day in paradise," he muttered, sliding a tray of what he considered a light breakfast onto the communal preparation station. To the human staff, it was a perfectly reasonable morning meal. To the station's diverse alien personnel, it looked like something that would require hazmat clearance. The tray contained 3 pounds of seasoned, slow-roasted beef, a mountain of scrambled eggs, hash browns liberally coated in ghost pepper sauce, something green that might have been a vegetable at some point, a thermos of coffee so strong it could potentially be classified as a controlled substance. Dr. Calvor, the Cyrillian xenobiologist assigned to monitor human dietary practices, watched in a state of escalating horror. His translucent membrane rippled with what could only be described as existential dread. "Riker," he said, his multiple vocal organs producing a sound that was part linguistic communication and part whimper. "Is that sustenance? Or are you preparing a chemical warfare demonstration?" Jack grinned. It was not a reassuring expression. "Breakfast, Doc. Just breakfast." Little did anyone know that this seemingly mundane meal would soon become the catalyst for the most significant diplomatic crisis in galactic history. But that's a story for the next course. The Neutral Zone's research platform wasn't Jack Riker's first rodeo with pushing the boundaries of what most species considered safe or sane. His journey began long before he became the unintentional diplomatic nightmare of the Galactic Concordance. Growing up in the hyper-industrialized megacity of New Shanghai, Detroit, Jack was a product of humanity's most aggressive agricultural and culinary engineering programs. While other children dreamed of becoming space pilots or xenobiological researchers, he'd been fascinated by the intricate dance of chemistry, nutrition, and flavor. His undergraduate thesis at the Global Culinary and Nutritional Engineering Institute was titled Extreme Environment Food Sustainability: Developing Nutrient-Dense Survival Cuisine for Hostile Planetary Conditions. Most academic review boards would have laughed such a proposal out of the room. The human board not only approved it, they funded it with enthusiasm. The project involved creating food systems that could provide maximum nutritional value in environments that would make most species spontaneously dissolve. Jack's prototype meal packets could sustain human life in environments ranging from the sulfuric acid clouds of Venus to the methane lakes of Titan. Each packet was essentially a concentrated bomb of calories, minerals, and pure survival potential. His professors called it groundbreaking. Alien xenobiologists would later call it a war crime in nutritional form. The Neutral Zone's research platform recruited him directly out of his postdoctoral research. Their mandate was simple: study interspecies nutritional compatibility and develop universal food systems that could support multiple biological frameworks. In practice, this meant Jack spent most of his time preventing accidental xenobiological incidents caused by well-meaning but fundamentally incompatible dietary requirements. Compatibility doesn't mean making everyone eat the same thing. He would often lecture nervous junior researchers. It means understanding that what keeps one species alive might liquefy another's internal organs. Dr. Calvor, still recovering from the breakfast display, shuffled closer. His species communicated through a complex system of membrane vibrations and chemical exchanges that roughly translated to passive-aggressive concern. "Riker," he said, his translucent form shifting colors in what Jack had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. "Your morning consumption ritual is concerning." Jack didn't even look up from preparing his next meal. "Concern is just another word for lack of imagination, Doc." The station's computer system, an AI with what could only be described as a dry sense of humor, chose that moment to chime in. "Nutritional analysis complete. Meal contains 4,700 calories, 327 grams of protein, and approximately 3.6 toxic compounds that would be classified as chemical weapons on 217 different planetary systems." See, Jack grinned. Perfectly normal. Dr. Calvor's membrane went a shade that suggested he was one protein molecule away from fainting. Humanity, in all its chaotic glory, had arrived in the galaxy, and the galaxy was about to get a crash course in what it meant to be a Deathworlder. Every great diplomatic disaster starts with something seemingly innocuous. In this case, it began with Jack Riker's experimental fusion cuisine project, a cross-species nutritional research initiative that was about to go spectacularly off the rails. The station's multicultural kitchen was a marvel of engineering. Designed to accommodate the wildly different nutritional needs of 17 distinct sentient species, it looked like a mad scientist's fever dream crossed with a high-end restaurant supply store. Pressure chambers, radiation filters, chemical stabilization units, and temperature zones competed for space alongside what could only be described as culinary torture devices masquerading as cooking equipment. Jack's current project was a breakthrough he'd been working on for months: a universal nutrient base that could be adapted to multiple species' biochemical requirements. The goal was simple: create a foundational food source that could be safely consumed across different biological frameworks. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Absolutely everything. The initial mixture looked innocuous enough. A pale, slightly viscous substance that Jack had been carefully calibrating for weeks. He'd run countless simulations, tested multiple protein configurations, and adjusted molecular structures to create something truly revolutionary. Dr. Calvor watched with a mixture of professional curiosity and deep-seated terror. His species had a complicated relationship with anything remotely resembling culinary experimentation. "The molecular resonance is within acceptable parameters," the station's AI announced. Its voice held the electronic equivalent of professional skepticism. Jack grinned. The kind of grin that made experienced researchers take several steps backward. "Time for the taste test," he declared. The first indication that something was wrong came approximately 2.7 seconds after Jack took his initial sample. The substance began to, well, react was too mild a word. It practically came to life. The nutrient base started to bubble. Not in the gentle, kitchen-friendly way that might suggest a pleasant chemical reaction. No, this was more like an angry, sentient substance deciding it had opinions about its current state of existence. "Interesting," Jack muttered, which was human for this is probably going to cause an international incident. Dr. Calvor's membrane went entirely translucent, a physiological response that roughly translated to, "We are all going to die." The substance began to emit a low-frequency hum. Nearby equipment started to vibrate. Molecular sensors went absolutely berserk, generating warning alerts that would have made a nuclear reactor safety team consider immediate evacuation. Riker, the station's AI, said, with what could only be described as digital concern, "I'm detecting molecular restructuring processes that violate at least 47 different interstellar food safety protocols." Jack's response was typical human brilliance in the face of potential catastrophe. "Cool. Take notes." What happened next would be discussed in diplomatic circles for generations. The experimental nutrient base didn't just react. It essentially declared culinary warfare on the known laws of physics. The substance began to generate its own heat. Not through any conventional means of energy transfer, but through what could only be described as sheer molecular audacity. It expanded, contracted, and seemed to be actively exploring the boundaries of its containment vessel with what felt suspiciously like intent. Dr. Vor took 3 scientific steps backward. Then another 2 for good measure. I believe he said, his multiple vocal organs producing a sound that was part terror and part fascination. We may have just witnessed the birth of something that defies categorization. Jack just smiled. Another day at the office. Little did they know this was just the beginning of what would become known in classified documents as the Riker Culinary Protocol breach, a incident that would require multiple diplomatic hearings, several industrial-strength decontamination protocols, and enough paperwork to wallpaper an entire space station. The aftermath of Jack's culinary experiment moved with the speed and precision of a galactic bureaucratic nightmare. Within hours, a specialized investigation team arrived at the Neutral Zones research platform, a collection of alien specialists so diverse they looked like an interstellar casting call for most uncomfortable diplomatic envoys. Leading the team was Adjudicator Vornak, a crystalline protoculture representative whose body was essentially a walking, talking geometric algorithm of pure administrative rage. His species was known for their ability to transform minor incidents into galaxy-spanning investigations with the efficiency of a weaponized spreadsheet. Explain, Vornak demanded, his crystalline structure producing sounds that were equal parts language and mathematical computation, the molecular anomaly you have generated. Jack leaned against the laboratory wall, looking about as concerned as someone who had just been asked to explain why the sky was blue. It's a nutrient-based prototype, he said, designed to be adaptable across multiple biological frameworks. Dr. Vor, who had been nervously hovering nearby, interjected. By adaptable, he means it nearly caused a localized quantum destabilization event. The investigation team's xenobiological expert, a slug-like creature named Researcher Glix, extended multiple sensory tendrils toward the containment vessel where the nutrient base had been originally created. The vessel was now sealed behind triple-reinforced quantum-locked barriers, a precaution that seemed both excessive and entirely reasonable. Preliminary analysis suggests, Glix reported, their vocal translator producing a sound that was part scientific observation and part existential dread, that this substance demonstrates properties that violate at least 73 separate interstellar food safety regulations. Jack raised an eyebrow. Is that all? Vornak's crystalline structure vibrated with what could only be described as bureaucratic fury. This is not a matter for cavalier attitude, human Riker. Your nutrient base has demonstrated capabilities that suggest it could be classified as a potential weapon of mass nutritional destruction. I was trying to solve global hunger, Jack replied deadpan. You may have accidentally created something that could either feed an entire planet or accidentally dissolve its molecular infrastructure, Glix added helpfully. The station's AI chose that moment to chime in. Nutritional analysis complete. Substance demonstrates potential for 462% increased nutrient absorption. Molecular reconfiguration capabilities. Unexplained heat generation. Possible sentience. Possible sentience. Vornak's crystalline form practically shimmered with bureaucratic panic. Jack shrugged. I prefer to think of it as proactive nutrition. The investigation would continue for weeks. Reports would be filed. Diplomatic channels would be flooded with increasingly bizarre technical specifications. Multiple species would convene emergency sessions to discuss the implications of a human who could accidentally create a substance that seemed to exist in a quantum state between food and potential existential threat. What they didn't know was that this was just the beginning of humanity's unexpected contribution to interstellar cuisine. And Jack Riker was just getting started. The Galactic Concordance's Special Nutritional Protocols Committee convened in what could only be described as a state of controlled panic. Holographic displays flickered with endless data streams, each one detailing some new bizarre characteristic of Jack Riker's accidental culinary creation. Adjudicator Vornak stood at the center of the chamber, his crystalline form projecting a three-dimensional molecular breakdown of the nutrient base. To the untrained eye, it looked like a beautiful, chaotic dance of atomic possibilities. To the assembled xenobiological experts, it looked like a potential apocalypse served with a side of hot sauce. Humans, Vornak began, his voice a perfect blend of scientific precision and bureaucratic condescension, represent a unique challenge to our understanding of biological limitations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the human representative to the committee, smiled. It was not a reassuring smile. The presentation continued. Each slide revealed another layer of Jack's inadvertent culinary miracle. The nutrient base could adapt to 97% of known biological metabolic systems, generate its own energy through molecular reconfiguration, potentially repair cellular damage during consumption, exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. In essence, Glix, the xenobiological researcher, noted, this is not merely a food, it is a potential universal biological solution. Jack, who had been brought in as the primary subject of investigation, looked distinctly unimpressed. He'd been through worse meetings during his graduate research presentations. So he interrupted, "You're telling me I accidentally created something that could potentially solve multiple species' nutritional challenges?" Vornak's crystalline structure vibrated with what could only be described as bureaucratic frustration. "You call this an accident? Most species spend centuries developing such technology." Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward. "Welcome to humanity," she said dryly. "We do our best work by accident." The revelation came not through complex scientific arguments, but through a simple demonstration. Jack took a sample of the nutrient base and, in front of the entire committee, began to modify its molecular structure using nothing more than a portable heating element and what appeared to be a standard kitchen whisk. "Watch this," he said. In moments, the substance transformed. Where once it had been a potentially dangerous molecular anomaly, it was now a perfectly stable, nutritionally complete substance that could be consumed by multiple species. The committee went silent. Glix's sensory tendrils quivered. How? How did you do that?" Jack grinned. "Cooking is just applied chemistry with better PR." The implications were staggering. Humanity had just demonstrated not just a technological breakthrough, but a fundamental approach to problem-solving that defied conventional galactic understanding. They didn't just create solutions, they improvised them with the casual brilliance of someone making a midnight snack. Vornak's final report would later describe the incident as a paradigm-shifting nutritional protocol recalibration. In human terms, it was just Tuesday. The Galactic Concordance would never look at human cuisine the same way again. 6 months after the nutrient base incident transformed galactic diplomatic protocols, the Galactic Concordance made a decision that would be debated in xenopolitical forums for generations. They created the Interspecies Nutritional Development and Cultural Exchange Department, and they put Jack Riker directly in charge. The department's headquarters occupied an entire section of the Neutral Zone's research platform, a sprawling complex that looked like what would happen if a scientific research facility, a Michelin-starred restaurant, and a quantum physics laboratory had a particularly ambitious offspring. Jack's primary workspace was a marvel of engineering. Containment units that looked like industrial-grade refrigerators lined the walls, each marked with warning labels in 17 different alien languages. Some labels were straightforward warnings. Others appeared to be legal disclaimers. A few seemed to be existential warnings about the nature of matter itself. Dr. Cale Vore, whose initial terror had morphed into a kind of professional respect, watched Jack work with a mixture of fascination and residual terror. Breakdown analysis complete, the station's AI announced. Current project demonstrates potential to solve nutritional challenges for 83% of known sentient species. Jack was constructing what appeared to be a simple sandwich. But in the world of interstellar nutritional science, nothing was ever simple. The bread, if one could call it that, was a molecular marvel. Synthesized from a combination of nutrients that could adapt to multiple atmospheric conditions, it could provide complete nutritional requirements for 6 different species. Its molecular structure could reconfigure based on the consumer's specific biochemical needs. The protein layer contained trace elements that could potentially assist in cellular regeneration. What looked like standard protein to the untrained eye was actually a carefully engineered molecular structure that could repair cellular damage while providing sustained energy. Preliminary simulations suggest this could revolutionize nutrition for resource-scarce colonies, Cale Vore muttered. His translucent membrane shifting colors, and what Jack had learned was a sign of scientific excitement. A holographic alert pinged. Incoming request from Cluster 9, a remote star system struggling with chronic malnutrition across multiple colony worlds. Their current food production systems were failing, and traditional agricultural methods were insufficient. The station's AI displayed the detailed nutritional and environmental parameters. Most scientific teams would require months, if not years, to develop a comprehensive solution. Jack looked at the data for approximately 37 seconds. "I'll have a solution by dinner," he said, already recalibrating molecular synthesizers and pulling up complex nutritional algorithms. Calvor's membrane went a shade that suggested a mixture of professional admiration and existential concern. "Humans," he said, more to himself than to anyone else, "are either the galaxy's greatest problem solvers or its most terrifying unpredictable variable." Jack grinned. It was not a reassuring expression. Outside the station's massive viewports, the galaxy stretched out a vast, complicated place that was slowly learning that humanity approached complex challenges the way most people approached a particularly interesting recipe. With curiosity, improvisation, and a complete disregard for conventional limitations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's words from the earlier diplomatic hearing echoed through the laboratory. "We do our best work by accident." And in the world of interstellar diplomacy, that was rapidly becoming less of a joke and more of an official operational strategy. The sandwich sat on the workstation, looking innocent. But in the universe of human innovation, nothing was ever truly innocent, just waiting to be transformed.